Good morning, children. I hope you have seen the previous video where I have discussed about the conventions, the definition of the conventions and the nature of conventions, right? And as I told you, conventions can be defined as the unwritten rules of political morality, that means public ethics, that means a way in which something is done, right, or behavior you would rather called, which are followed by successive power holders for the sake of convenience, right? Or you would rather describe it as the custom of the constitution or as political tradition which are followed by the office holders of the government, right children? So here I'm going to give you the examples of the British conventions and the American conventions, right children? So here you would say here you would come to know what are the conventions given in the British constitution related to British monarchy, relating to British cabinet system, relating to British Parliament, and relating to Commonwealth of Nation. Right children? After that I'm going to explain you about the conventions related to American Constitution. So let me give you the examples of the conventions. As everyone knows, conventions, that means what do you mean by conventions? That means political habits, customs. Right children? So let's see what is there now. Okay, children, the major conventions of the British Constitution. So basically, I'm going to give you the example of conventions related to British monarchy. You just need to, listen to it attentively. Now, conventions, the examples. What are the conventions related to British monarchy are? Monarchy, the rules of kings and queens, and everyone knows British is ruled by queens, right? Now, the monarchy always act upon the advice of the cabinet. The monarchy does not attend the meeting of the cabinet. The monarchy never exercises his veto over the bills passed by the parliament. The monarchy dissolves the House of Commons only on the advice of the cabinet. The monarch appoints only the leader of the majority party in the House of Commons as the PM. Upon the resignation of the cabinet, the monarch always invites the leader of the opposition to form the cabinet. So here, conventions. I'm simply telling you about the British monarchy, right, children, and what they are doing. Right, these are the examples of the British conventions given in the Constitution about British monarchy. What are their rules and regulations? What British monarch could have done so far in the Constitution? These are the rules, or you would rather say the conventions made for the monarchy in the Britain Constitution, the British Constitution, right children? Now next we see conventions relating to the British cabinet system. Now we're coming to the British cabinet system. Now what are the conventions related to British cabinet system given in the British Constitution, children? Now here the leader of the majority in House of Commons gets appointed as the PM of Britain. PM preside over the meeting of the cabinet. PM always belongs to the House of Commons. All the minister must be member of British Parliament. The organization of the cabinet is the handiwork of the PM. Cabinet remains in office only so long as it enjoys the confidence of the majority in the House of Commons. For all its policies, the cabinet is collectively responsible before the House of Commons. The cabinet resigns in case any of its policies or bill or taxation proposal is rejected by the House of Commons. The cabinet resigns the moment the House of Commons passes a vote of no confidence against it. The cabinet keeps on working as a caretaker government after the dissolution of the parliament and continues in office till the organization of a new cabinet. The cabinet can make war and peace only with the consent of the parliament. When the House of Commons passes a censure motion against any minister, indicting him for lapses in the working of the department, only that minister and not the cabinet resign. A minister remains in office so long as he enjoys the confidence of the PM. The pleasure of the king really means the wish of the PM. The king dissolved the House of Commons only on the advice of the PM. The advice of the PM regarded as the advice of the cabinet. All the ministers are appointed from amongst the members of the majority party. However, during national emergencies, as the one created by war, representatives of all the parties, which have representation in the parliament, are included in the cabinet. Such a cabinet is called war cabinet or national cabinet. Next, for all that passes in the cabinet, every member of it is absolutely and responsible, and each has to defend all the decision of the cabinet. Ministers must defend each other in the parliament and in respect of all the policies of the government. So you are seeing that key, obviously all these things is being followed in Indian Constitution as well, children, right? Like the cabinet system, House of Commons. For example, we have Lok Sabha in India, right? And House of Commons, obviously Lok Sabha is simply based on that model. So children, these are the conventions related to British cabinet system. Earlier I've already explained you the conventions related to British monarchy. Don't get confused. Conventions are the political customs, right? They're given in the British Constitution. Now another example of conventions related to British Parliament. Now, children, here the bicameral organization of the British Parliament rests upon convention. In each house of the British Parliament, a bill is read thrice before it is passed. The member of the House of Commons who gets elected as its speaker always resign his party membership. The speaker maintains strict political neutrality. In the election, the Speaker of the House of Commons is elected unopposed from his constituency. Once elected, the Speaker remains in office as long as he desires. The Parliament must hold at least one meeting during a year. The ruling party always formulates policies only in respect of the matter for which it has secured the mandate of the people. The winning of majority of seats in the House of Commons by a political party is taken to mean that its election manifesto has received the mandate of the people. Legally, the standing order of either house can be amended or abolished by a majority vote, but in actual practice, the ruling party always takes the opposition to confidence before undertaking such an exercise. The committees of the House reflect the party strength of the House. The system of holding consultations between the government and the concerned interest group in respect of measures for lawmaking and policy making also rests upon conventions. So these are the conventions examples relating to British Parliament, children. Now we have conventions related to the Commonwealth of Nation. Now, British King Queen is the ex officio head of Commonwealth of Nation. The laws of the British Parliament do not apply to the Dominion. While undertaking function relating to dominions, the monarch depend upon the advice of the cabinet of the concerned dominion and not on the advice of the British cabinet. Right, children? As such, conventions regulate the organization and working of all institutions of British Constitution. So I hope so, children, you people have understood about the major conventions of the British Constitution. They are being given under different headings, and I have already given you the examples regarding this. Right, children? Now, just let's move on to the next slide now. Now, major conventions of the US Constitution. So earlier, children, we have done the political customs, right, or conventions, you would rather say, of the British Constitution. Now here, I'm going to explain you about the major conventions of the US Constitution or American Constitution. So very first thing, presidential cabinet rests on convention. It means, children, the Constitution nowhere mentions the presidential cabinet. It simply states that in the running of US administration, the president can consult the heads of the executive department. This provision has been the basis for the origin and development of the presidential cabinet. Initially, the president started seeking the advice of heads of the executive department individually, but this practice was abandoned as it created a problem of coordination and resulted in delays in decision making. The president then started consulting collectively the executive heads. They came to be known as collectively described as the presidential cabinet. The origin and development of the cabinet, its organization working, stands based entirely on the conventions. I hope so, children, you people have understood. Next, conventions regarding presidential elections. The credit for informally transforming the indirect election of the president into a direct election belongs to some convention. The law is that the people elect an electoral college which then elect the president. Direct election has been possible because of a convention by which the member of the presidential electoral college declare in advance their commitments to vote for the respective party. Candidates seeking election as the president and vice president. Their election on party lines makes their commitment firm and definite. As such, the elections of the presidential electoral college by the people is virtually a direct election of the president and vice president by the people. The party whose candidates secure a majority of the seats in the presidential electoral college ensures the election of its candidates for the offices of the president and the vice president. Thus, the conventions of holding election for the presidential electoral college on party lines has made the presidential election a direct election in practice. Next, conventions of not having the president and the vice president from the same region or state. The Constitution places no restriction regarding the choice of candidate for the offices of president and vice president. However, through a convention, it has been laid down that the candidate for these two offices do not belong to the same region or state. They are to be chosen not only from different states but also from different regions. If the candidate for the presidencies is from a northern state, the candidate for the office of vice president must be from a southern state. Next, party primaries and national conventions. The process of presidential elections constitutionally involves only two stages: the election of the member of presidential electoral college by the people and the election of president and vice president by presidential electoral college. However, in actual practice, the process involves several stages, the first two of which happens to be, the holding of party primaries through which both the major party elect their delegates for the respective national conventions. Next, the holding of national conventions and nomination in advance of the candidate for the offices of president and vice president. The presidential elections now really begins at the party level and then culminates into a constitutional process. This has happened due to the emergence of political parties and their ways of doing things. Next, origin and growth of political parties and the bi-party system. The origin and growth of political parties and a bi-party system has possibly largely due to emergence of several conventions. Right, children? Now here, there exists an intimate interdependence between the constitutional institution, Congress and presidency, and the extra-legal constitutional institution, political parties. This has been based upon conventions. The function of the political parties has become an integral part of the election system. The actual working of the government machinery has been possible because of the existence of political parties. The existence of bi-party system has made it possible for the American to successfully work their system of electing their presidents and vice president by an absolute majority of votes in the presidential electoral college. Next, convention related to the office of the Speaker. The US Constitution simply provides for the office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. It maintains a silence in respect of his function and role. The function role of the Speaker as the chairman of the House of Representatives and as the leader of the House by virtue of being the leader of majority party depend upon conventions. Next, residential qualification for the member of the House of Representatives. The Constitution simply states that a candidate seeking election to the House of Representatives must be a resident of the state from which he is seeking election. In practice, this provision has been interpreted to mean that he must be a resident not only of the state but also of the electoral district constituency from which he is seeking election. Next, committee system of the Congress. Here, the US Constitution does not contain any provision regarding the committee system of the Congress. The emergence and continuance of the committees of both the House of the Congress has been possible only because of some conventions. Next, the institution of investigation committee. Investigation committees are appointed by the two houses of the Congress either individually or jointly for investigating the working of various government departments. This practice also rests upon conventions. Right, children? Next, we have citizenship and residence qualification for the senators. The candidates seeking election to the US Senate have to be a citizen of that state. This is a constitutional requirement. Along with it, a convention has developed that a candidate of a political party for the two seats of a Senate must not be from the same areas or region of the state. Next, if you say secretarial courtesy, it means regarding the constitutional provision will provide that all appointments made by the president become final only when these are approved by the Senate. There has emerged a well set of convention, the senatorial courtesy. By this convention, before making all federal appointment, the president holds prior consultation with the senators of the state in which a particular appointment has to be made. If the president fails to honor this convention and does not hold prior consultation with the concerned senator, the Senate, out of courtesy towards its members, reject the appointment made by the president. This convention of senatorial courtesy now governs the implementation of the constitutional provisions regarding the making of federal appointments by the president with the consent of the Senate. Next, nomination of candidate for the office of vice president by the president. Both the Republican and Democrats have adopted the convention of nominating their respective candidates only for the office of the president of the United States. Each allows its nominated presidential candidate to select his running mate for the office of the vice president. Right, children? Then, maximum 2 terms for each president. Now it is a constitutional provision that no person can hold the office of president for a third time. A person can remain president for a maximum of 2 terms only. This started as a convention when the first president, George Washington, refused to contest election for the third term. This practice was also followed by subsequent presidents like John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Monroe. This gave rise to conventions of holding presidential office for a maximum of 2 terms. This convention was incorporated as law by 22nd Amendment. This was done to plug in the breach of the conventions committed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who remained president for 4 successive terms. Next, exercise of the power of judicial review by the Supreme Court. The US Constitution makes no mention of the judicial review power of Supreme Court. Right, children? It emerged as a judicial conventions after the historic judgment in the historical judgment. Next, executive agreement of the president. The Constitution gives to the president the power of concluding treaties with other states, which however become operative only when these get senatorial approval by a 2/3 majority. However, by a convention, it has been established that the executive agreement that the president makes with the government of other state do not require senatorial approval. this way we have reached to the end of the video, children. Don't get confused, children. These are the conventions, given in British as well as the US Constitution, and I'm quoting different examples, right, children? Like what is given under citizenship and residential qualification, and so on, right, children? So if you see, as such, several conventions have been playing an important role in the working of the US Constitution. The rigidity and silence of the US Constitution in respect of several aspects of the organization, working of organs of the government, have been together responsible for the emergence of a large number of conventions in the USA. Right? It can be legitimately said there are almost as many conventions in the USA as there are in Great Britain. Right, children? So do listen to this video attentively. You will get everything. Thank you.